Lesson 19. Story Writing. Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, a king and a queen lived in a castle. They wanted children, and one day their baby princess was born. They were very happy and invited all the fairies to the castle for a party. Unluckily, one wicked fairy didn't receive an invitation. She was very angry and put an evil spell on the princess. She said, "When you are 16, you will prick your finger and die." But a good fairy changed the spell. She said, "The princess will sleep for 100 years." The king and queen tried to protect the princess by taking away all the needles. People didn't use needle at all. But one day, on her 16th birthday, the princess pricked her finger. Everyone in the castle stopped what they were doing and they all started to feel tired. They fell asleep and slept for 100 years. One day, a prince walked through the forest and he discovered the castle. He knocked at the door, but no one answered. He opened the door and went into the castle. He looked in all the rooms. He found the beautiful princess and touched her hand. She woke up, they got married and lived happily ever after. A Truthful Boy. Once upon a time, there were two friends who lived in a palace with their families, who worked in service of the king. One of these boys knew a girl he liked so much that he wanted to give her a present. One day, he was walking with his friend in the main palace hall and he saw a big vase filled with the loveliest flowers you could imagine. He decided to take one to give to the girl, thinking that no one would see him do so. He did the same thing the next day and the next day and the next, until one day the king noticed how few flowers were left in the vase. He was so angry that he called to assemble. When they were all before the king, the boy thought he should say it had been him who took the flowers. However, his friend told him to be quiet because the king would be terribly angry with him. The boy was paralyzed with fear, but when the king came near, he decided to confess. As soon as the boy said that he had done it, the king went red with anger. But on hearing what the boy had done with the flowers, a smile appeared on the king's face. And he said, "I couldn't have thought of a better use for my flowers." And from that day, the boy and the king became great friends. They went to the vase and took two of those wonderful flowers, one for the girl and the other for the queen. Jim's present. Jim had grown a huge watermelon in his garden. It was the biggest watermelon anybody had ever seen, and Jim was very proud of it. One day, the king was touring his country in disguise. He arrived there and was fascinated by the watermelon. "Will you give it to me?" he asked Jim. "No," replied he. "Will you sell it to me?" asked the king. "No," said Jim. "Then what are you going to do with it?" asked the king. "I plan to take it to the palace and give it to the king," he said. "I see," said the king. "But suppose he refuses to accept it? Then he can go to the devil," snorted Jim. A few days later, Jim came to the palace with the watermelon. He at once recognized the king but gave no sign that he had done so. I have brought a watermelon for you, Your Majesty, he said humbly. It's a marvel, said the king. But suppose I refuse to accept it? Then, sir, said Jim timidly, you already know my answer. Marty is a helping mouse. Marty is a helping mouse. It was Friday night and Marty was relaxing in a chair. He had his feet propped up, watching a show without a care. His mom was in the kitchen cleaning dishes, pots and pans. But then she started feeling sick and had to change their plans. She went to bed and said she would finish up after a rest. She needed to lie down because she did not feel her best. Marty turned the TV off and said, Are you alright? His mom said, I am okay, but I will need to rest tonight. So, off to bed she went, and Marty felt a little sad. He could have helped out more, but since he didn't, he felt bad. So while his mother rested, he cleaned every pan and pot. He washed up all the dishes and scrubbed every little spot. The kitchen was so clean that it seemed to sparkle everywhere, and Marty felt much better since he made a difference there. When Marty's mom woke up, she thought she had a lot to do. She had to clean the kitchen and wash all the dishes too. But when she came to do it, she could not believe her eyes. The kitchen was all cleaned up. It was such a nice surprise. She thanked Marty for caring and for all the work he did. She told him he was thoughtful and a really super kid. So Marty learned on that day that helping can be fun to do. It made someone feel happy and it made him happy too. So always remember to help others to make them happy.